Alright, today we're going to be looking at the Java programming language. And this is a great language if you have little to no experience in the world of coding and you're interested. I'm going to be going over some of the main aspects of programming in Java and the smallest details that beginners might not be aware of. I like Java because it's the main programming language with Android applications, so if you wanted to get into app development, specifically for Android, Java is something you're going to have to learn. Now, a lot of you might be familiar with Java as something you have to install on your browser. And what that is the Java Runtime Environment, or JRE. To get started with Java development, you're going to need the Java Development Kit, or JDK, which is a software development environment used for developing Java applications and applets. It includes the JRE and all the other tools you need for Java development. And it's available at no cost from Oracle. Just go to oracle.com and just go ahead and download and install the Java JDK. Java started in 1991, and one of the things about Java is that it's an object-oriented programming language. So this is a language model that is organized around objects rather than actions, and data rather than logic. I really like the way Steve Jobs once explained how object-oriented programming works. He said, "Objects are like people. They're living, breathing things that have knowledge inside them about how to do things and have memory inside them so they can remember things. And rather than interact with them at a very low level, you interact with them at a very high level of abstraction, like talking with them." Here's an example. If I'm your laundry object, you can give me your dirty clothes and send me a message that says, "Can you get my clothes clean, please?" I happen to know where the best laundry place in San Francisco is, and I speak English, and I have dollars in my pockets. So I go out and hail a taxi cab and tell the driver to take me to this place in San Francisco. I go get your clothes cleaned. I jump back in the cab, I give you your clean clothes and say, "Here are your clean clothes." You have no idea how I did that. You have no knowledge of the laundry place. Maybe you speak French and you can't even hail a taxi. You can't pay for one. You don't have dollars in your pocket. Yet I knew how to do all of it, and you didn't have to know any of it. All of that complexity was hidden inside of me, and we were able to interact at a very high level of abstraction. That's what objects are. They encapsulate complexity, and the interfaces to that complexity are high level. So object-oriented programming relies on this idea of encapsulation, which is basically hiding complex functionality. Access to individual functions can be restricted. You hide complex functionality in methods, and the true nature of encapsulated data may also be hidden. Some of the benefits of encapsulation is that you're breaking functionality into small, maintainable units, and you're grouping functions and data together. To illustrate the idea of encapsulation, I have two coffee makers here. One that is representing encapsulated data, and the other that is representing non-encapsulated data. The non-encapsulated coffee maker, you can see the coffee filter, you can see the coffee in the inside and the water going through it and steaming and creating coffee, which is eventually then poured into the cup. This is an analogy for non-encapsulated data because you can see everything inside, whereas with the encapsulated coffee maker, all you see is the coffee going into the cup. You don't see any of the inner processes that make that happen. And that's the idea of encapsulation, where you're basically hiding complex functionality, in this case, how the coffee is made, and in Java, you're hiding complex functionality in methods. Encapsulation is a promise from the author of a class to anyone who might use it. It says, "Access my class with the methods I give you, and I promise to make them always work the same way, even if I change other things," quote. The reason for using getters and setters is that it makes it possible to change the implementation without changing the interface. Getters and setters are completely ordinary functions. The only thing that makes them getters or setters is the convention. A quote-unquote getter for coffee is called getCoffee. Okay? And a setter is called setCoffee. In the case of a Boolean, which is a value with two choices, the getter is called isCoffee. So, for example, let's say I have a class bank account and a member called balance. And you might be tempted to do things like account.balance equals $100, and that might work fine for a while. But if the class is redesigned a little bit, instead of balance, it's split into current balance and pending balance, balance no longer exists, and any code that relies on it will break. So one way to get around this are things called getters and setters. So something like account.setBalance 100 will always work no matter what the author does to the internals, because that is the quote-unquote promise that they made to you. If they ever change the setBalance method, it's up to the author to let people know. Java programs are structured with classes and objects. In Java, all code is defined in classes. Here we have main.java, which is our class in this case. And it's basically a blueprint or prototype from which objects are created. You can think of a class as a recipe and objects as cookies coming from that recipe. So one thing to keep in mind is that a class describes what an object knows and what an object does. An object is an instance of a class. So, for example, if you had a shopping cart, something like the cart contents would be what the object knows, and something that the object does would be, add to cart or check out. So the things that the object knows about itself are called instance variables, and things an object can do are called methods. There's all kinds of editors and integrated development environments, or IDEs, associated with Java. We're going to be using IntelliJ IDEA, which is my favorite IDE for working with Java. This is actually what Android Studio is based off of. So to get IntelliJ IDEA, you're going to go ahead and go to www.jetbrains.com/IDEA and download the free version of IntelliJ. Once it's installed, you're going to be presented with this screen. The first thing you're going to want to do is click on Configure and click on Project Defaults, and you want to click on Project Structure. And you're going to want to go down to SDKs, hit the plus sign here, and you're going to find the location of your Java JDK. And once you find it, click OK, and you're going to go back to Project and switch this tab right here to the JDK that you downloaded and installed. And then go ahead and hit Apply and OK, and we're going to create a new project. And I usually leave these settings. You want to make sure that it's set to the JDK that you downloaded, and I'm going to click Next, and I'm going to check this little Create Project from Template and click Next. And let's go ahead and call this Austin's Cool Project. And I'm going to switch the location and click OK and click Finish. And what it's going to do is go ahead and create that project. To go ahead and show the sidebar which we're going to be using, just go ahead and click on this little button down here and click on Project. And we want to be able to see all of this on the side here. I'm going to drop down this tab here and open up the src, which is the source file. And you can see here it says main, and this is main.java. And a main class is a class that contains a main method. And this class acts as the entry point for a Java application. A main class can have any name, although it's just typically called main. And you can see it's already got this code in here for you. And I'm going to go over what this code actually means. You can see right off the bat it says package com.company, and a package is a namespace that organizes a set of related classes and interfaces. Conceptually, you can think of packages as being similar to different folders on your computer. So this package is basically a way to organize things, and you can see the package com.company is right here. This is the folder, and it's got the main class inside of it. All code in Java is defined in classes. You can think of a class as a cookie recipe, and the cookies that come from that recipe as the objects, which we'll get into. But for right now, we're going to look at how it says public class main. Public means that the method is visible and can be called from other objects of other types. So anything that's under this will be able to be seen. So it's basically the visibility. Class we've already went over, and the class is this main class over here. And then we have our opening braces, and inside these two braces is our first method right here. You can see right here it already has a comment, and a comment is made by doing 2 forward slashes and then writing the comment itself. you compile your code and run it and test it with this play button up here. So you see it's going to run this main class right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click play. And it's going to go ahead and compile and run this code. And down here in the console, you can see it doesn't show anything because we haven't put any code in yet. So, as for the actual method, it has the same idea of public, which is the visibility of it, and static, which means that the method is associated with the class. And next we have void, which means that the method has no return value. For example, if the method returned an integer, you would write int for integer instead of void. And then main is the name of the main method, which, if you noticed, is lowercase, which methods always start with. On the contrary, classes always start with a capital letter. So you see this main for the main class has a capital M, and this main for the main method has a lowercase m. And next you see parentheses with something inside the parentheses, and this is basically the arguments to the method. So we have our main method, and inside the parentheses are the arguments to the method. This method is given an array of strings, and the array will be called args. And we have the opening brace of the method. So let's go ahead and put some code inside the method here so that we can see it run. Let's do a simple hello world application. To have some output text go to the console, you're going to go ahead and type system.out.println open parentheses quote hello world. World. I can't spell. World. And you can see it has the closing quote and closing parentheses, and I'm just going to add a semicolon. And I want to point out right here that this green part, the hello world statement, this is what's called a string. And a string is an array of characters. So our characters are HELLOWORLD exclamation point. Okay, that's our string. And this is ready to send our first output to the console, which will be hello world. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on the play button here. And if you look down here, it says hello world. And there's no exclamation point, which I wish it had one. So if I want to add an exclamation point, I can just go ahead and click here and add in the exclamation point and click run again. And there we go. That looks much better. Hello world. Alright, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and triple click to select all of this comment here and go ahead and delete it. So some of the quirks about Java is that it's case sensitive, which you might have noticed, and also white space doesn't affect the interpretation of code. So spaces, tabs, and line feeds are quote-unquote collapsed by the compiler. But all statements must end with a semicolon. So you noticed with this hello world output, I put a semicolon at the end. So just to review what we have here, you have our main.java class, okay, and up top we have the package declaration. Next we have the class declaration, and following this we have the main method, and inside the method we have the executable code. Okay, right now I want to take a minute and talk about primitive types. We already talked about one primitive type, the integer, which is int. But to understand what primitive types are, you can think of them as numbers, characters, and what's called booleans. They're stored in the fastest available memory, and primitive data type names are always all lowercase. And we're going to get to strings in a minute, but it's just important to understand that a string is not a primitive. So a great analogy to use when trying to understand primitive types is cup sizes at Starbucks. You have your small, short, tall, and grande cup sizes. And similarly, in Java, you have your byte, short, int, and long, quote-unquote, cup sizes in Java. So it's just basically the amount that you can hold within one of these types. So what we're going to do is go ahead and see one of these primitive types in action. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and triple click to select this statement and delete it. And inside the method here, I'm going to type int for the integer type, space, and I'm going to type age, because I'm going to give this primitive type the name, the variable name of age, and type equals 21 semicolon. Okay, so this is our variable type declaration. So by itself, this statement isn't going to do anything, but what we're going to do is create a conditional operator, which basically asks whether or not you're old enough to purchase alcohol. To do that, we're going to do something similar to what we did before. I'm going to go down a couple lines and type system.out.println, and then parentheses. What we're going to do is use the age variable. We're going to type age, and then put greater than, I typed it wrong, age, and then we're going to type greater than or equal than 21 question mark. So we're going to be asking whether or not the age variable is greater than or less than the 21. So in the first case, age is greater than 21, and we're going to type, quote, you are old enough to purchase alcohol. Let me get this a little bit smaller so you can see. You are old enough to purchase alcohol. And in our second case, denoted with the colon here, I'm going to type, quote, you are too young to purchase alcohol. Okay? And don't forget to put your semicolon at the end there. And this should be ready to run. So let's go ahead and click run, and I'll show you what's happening. So it says, it outputs, you are old enough to purchase alcohol. Alright? So basically what happened is it's asking whether or not our variable, our age variable, is higher or lower than 21. And it gives you an output based on that. So 21 is greater than or equal to 21, so it outputs, you are old enough to purchase alcohol. If 21 were lower than 21, which I'll demonstrate right now, I'll put 16, it should output the too young statement. So let's go ahead and hit play. And you see it says, you are too young to purchase alcohol. So this is just one example of using primitive types and using a conditional operator. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is get rid of what's in the main method here. And I'm just going to go ahead and show you different functions and things you can do with Java programming. I'll start with a loop. In this case, we're going to use what's called a quote-unquote while loop. So what we're going to do is type int for integer, and we're going to call it x, and we're going to write equals 1 semicolon. And then we're going to type while, parentheses, and our condition is x is less than 4, parentheses, open brace. So while x is less than 4, what we're going to have happen is we're going to say x plus plus, which basically increments x by 1. Then we're going to push enter, and we're going to put an output of system.out.println, parentheses, quote, value of x is, colon, space, and then outside of the quote, but still in the parentheses, I'm going to put plus x. And then we're going to put semicolon, and go ahead and let's run this program. And you can see it says value of x is 2, value of x is 3, and value of x is 4. What's happening is we gave our variable a value of 1 right off the bat. And then we ran a loop that says while this x variable is less than 4, first time around it is because it's 1, so it is less than 1, do this, increment 1 by 1. You remember x plus plus basically adds 1 to the value. And then print out value of x is, and then add the actual value of x, which at this point would be 2. So you can see it says 2. It tries this again. It loops around, and it says, while x is less than 4, is x less than 4? Yes, it's 2. And then it goes through it again and becomes 3, goes through it again, becomes 4, and then the last time it's checking to see whether or not x is less than 4. Well, 4 is not less than 4, so then it finishes. So if I wanted to add value of x is 1, what I have to do is declare that before the actual loop starts. So what I'm going to do is type system.out.println parentheses value of x is colon space plus x. Alright, actually it's the same line. I could have copied and pasted that. I'm going to put that under the variable declaration here. So now when I hit play, it should say 1, 2, 3, 4. You see that? So that's the basics of how a while loop works. What I want to show you next is how a for loop works. So I'm going to get rid of the code inside our method here by selecting it all and clicking backspace. And let's see, I have one more brace that I need, so I'm going to get rid of that. Alright, and let's go ahead and I'm going to show you how you can use a for loop to print out an array of characters from a string. So to show you what I mean, we're going to type string, because we're going to create a string here, and we're going to call it my string, and then we're going to type equals, quote, this is so cool. Okay, and I'm going to put a semicolon at the end of it. Next, we're going to use char, which is for character. This is another type that I haven't talked about, but char is basically one character. It's also a primitive type. And we're going to put brackets here, because brackets are used to index an array. And what we're doing is printing an array of strings. And what we're doing is printing an array of characters from a string. So I'm going to call this char my character. And I'm going to type equals, and then we're going to use the main string variable from before, and then put a period, and we're going to put toChar array. Okay, so because we're going to create an array of characters. So actually, it highlights it already, so I'm just going to push enter and put semicolon. And this is all set up to take this is so cool string and break it down into different characters. Okay, T, H, I, S, and each character go through. So here's where the for loop comes in. What we're going to do is type for parentheses int for integer, int I equals 0, I is less than my character dot length. Oh, I didn't spell that right. My character dot length semicolon I plus plus parentheses open brace. Okay, so what does this mean? This int I equals 0 is the initialization. So integer, this new variable called I equals 0. Next we have a test. So if I is less than the length of this character array, and we're going to add 1 to the value of I. What it's saying is create a variable I and set it to 0. Repeat while I is less than the length of the my character variable. And finally, at the end of each loop iteration, add 1 to I. And inside of this for loop, we're going to output the string array. So we're going to put system.out.println parentheses my character, which is the variable we used, my character bracket I, and then semicolon at the end. Let's go ahead and click run, and you're going to see it says this is so cool, but it's written vertically. Okay, it took the string and turned it into an array of characters, one character for each line, and that's because of this for loop. Okay, so it started with T the first time around, second time around it went H, third time it went I, fourth time S, and so on. So these are just a couple of loops you can use with Java. So finally, I'm just going to show you how you can create a simple dice roll application. So I'm going to get rid of the for loop code in our main method here, and I'm going to start by creating what's called a new random object. Okay, and when I push enter, if you notice up here it says import java.util.random. This is importing a class into our program that's called random. Okay, this is something we can use with our program. Alright, it just has to be imported. And we're going to call our random variable dice, okay, by typing dice, and then type equals, and then we're going to go new random. Okay, parentheses, semicolon. Then we're going to type int for integer. We're going to type number. It's going to be the name of our integer variable. Then we're going to type system.out.println parentheses, the random 3 roles are colon space. Then I'm going to type another semicolon to close it. And we're going to put in a for loop, okay? That's going to generate our 3 numbers. So we're going to type for parentheses int counter, it's the name of our variable here, equals 1 colon counter is less than or equal to 3 semicolon counter plus plus. Okay, so this is the same idea as the I variable we used before. Okay, and actually instead of a semicolon I'm going to open a brace. Okay, this is to start our loop. Push enter, and I'm going to use the variable from before, number equals 1 plus dice dot, we're going to use this function next int parentheses colon, and inside the parentheses I'm going to put 6, okay, because inside a die there are 6 sides, because on a die there are 6 sides. And the reason we put 1 plus at the beginning here is because Java, like many other programming languages, start counting at 0. Okay, so if we didn't put the 1 plus, it would be 0 through 5, but we want it to be 1 through 6, so we add 1 to each of the numbers. And under this line we're going to write system.out.println open parentheses number plus, and then we're going to put a space. Alright, and then we're going to close it off. Okay, just to show you what happens, we're going to run the program, and let's see. It says the random 3 roles are 3, 1, and 4. Okay, so that's a simple random dice roll generator. Okay, if we run it again, it'll have 3 new numbers. See, it's using that random class to create 3 random numbers, which we used a for loop to help create. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like to have a program with more than one class. Okay, so we already have our main.java class, and what we're going to do is create a program that asks you what your name is, and then after you type your name in, it is going to say hello and then your name. So in order to type an input into our program, we're going to, in our first method here, we're going to want to put scanner input equals new scanner parentheses system dot in. And if you notice, the scanner is actually in red, and that's because we actually have to import this class. So an easy way to do it is if you just hold Alt and push enter, and we're going to click import class, and we'll go scanner java.util, and you see up top it imports the java.util.scanner class. And next we are going to type hello my object equals new hello. This line right here, this is an example of what is called instantiation, which is creating the object. And the reason the hello is in red is because we actually haven't created the class that defines this object. Okay? And next we're going to type system.out.println and quote, what is your name? Question mark space, and put a semicolon at the end of that, and we're going to create a new string called name variable. We're going to say equals input dot next semicolon. My object dot simple message, simple, make sure you put the capitals in there, message parentheses name variable. Okay, and you notice that the simple message is also in red. In order to get rid of that, we're going to go up to our package folder and right click it and click new Java class. Okay, and we're going to call the class hello. And we have our new class here. And what we want to do inside this class is create our first method, the simple message method. So what we're going to do is public void simple message, parentheses string, name variable. Then we're going to go open bracket, system.out.println, parentheses hello, and then add the name variable. So let's actually look at how it will run. I'm going to run the program, and we'll see if it all went well. It says, what is your name? I'm going to type Austin, hit enter. It says, hello Austin. Okay, it's the first conversation with a computer. And let's look at what's actually happening. So right off the bat, you're importing this scanner class, which allows a user to type in an input. We're instantiating the myObject object. And right off the bat, we are printing out, what is your name? Question mark. And the user is going to type in a response to this question, and that is going to become the name variable. Then next, we are just creating the simple message here of that name variable. But to understand what this is, we have to go to our other class and see that the simple message is basically printing out hello plus what the name variable is, and that's again whatever the user types. So this is just an example of using multiple classes and using objects and classes in your Java programming. So this was just some of the very basics of Java programming. There's many more things that you can do with Java. This is just the very essential basics for the program. I love Java. If you want to create Android apps, learning Java is essential, and it's a really good introduction to the world of programming if you're a complete beginner. So I hope this tutorial helped you. If you enjoy tutorials like these, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.